Welcome back to the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast from Kidmin Collective. Monthly episodes featuring leading global Kidmin voices, real stories, and practical leadership tools. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast. I'm Andy Kirk, and today I've got my good friends with me, Shawn and Delia. It's so good to have you guys with me.
Hey, it's great to be here. Yeah.
Well, today's podcast, we are talking all about innovation and even entrepreneurship. And that's going to be cool. And you're thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not that innovative. Well, you are. You're in kids ministry. And we're always trying to contextualize, strategize, work out ways to connect with this generation. Gen Alpha right now is different. And I know for someone who's been in children's ministry for 20 years, I might be doing the same things, but I'm doing them a little bit differently. And that comes out. One word that sort of jumps when we talk about even entrepreneurship, that's more an external, whereas there's this other term, I only learned it recently in our studies. We're actually doing a whole lot of study together with entrepreneurship. It's the innovation or the internally within an organization. And so, although I said innovation and entrepreneurship, is probably a lot more about entrepreneurship, about how you can be in your church setting and how you can innovate and think. So guys, when we think about this, what's the first thing that sort of jumps to your mind in the context of children's ministry next gen, of where you've had to really try and innovate or stay ahead of the curve? Delia?
Oh my goodness. It's, on the Working Genius, innovation is my number one. So I always wondered in kids ministry, could I use that creativity and everything? And it's the perfect place to do it. It's like a sandbox because the gospel doesn't change, but the methods do. And we want to be responsive to that. We don't want to be a church that's, we lose a generation because we're not taking the kids that are in front of us in account. And so, oh my gosh, all the time we're constantly looking and saying, okay, is what we're doing working? And so being very feedback driven and being honest with what's working in our ministry, what's not, and then what can we do to make it better? How do we better disciple our kids, disciple our parents, and get the gospel into their minds and their hearts?
I love you. You're such a innovative leader, and you're thinking forward. I think of a quote though, and I know for me, my biggest problem is that quote: "It doesn't take a leader to start something; it takes a leader to stop something."
Yeah.
And sometimes that moment of going, well, we innovated and we started, but you touched on that the review, the getting critical feedback and knowing, and even when to go, hey, let's stop that. It worked for those good couple of years, or let's pivot and change is so important. Shawn, what would you say in that area?
Yeah, I think everything has a life cycle on it, and I think the why is the why. Why is consistent and throughout. Like that's why we do what we do. But as we've said, models and methods are going to change. And I think everything, even within the life church, there's a life cycle. We're having to constantly reevaluate. I love reevaluating, using that construct, the 4 helpful list on like what's working, what's missing, what's confused. And the hardest time to make a change is when it's at the tail end and at the bottom side of that life cycle. Or that's the most obvious time to make the change. The hardest time to make the change is when it's at the peak.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because when you start reevaluating, but you need to discern, hey, is this as effective as it once was?
Yeah.
And as a leader, you have to discern, is it time to pivot and kind of think of something new?
Yeah.
And that's a hard space to get in. And we've had to make changes at peak moments, which it is very hard to cast vision to your leaders, even to leadership, and that, hey, it's working. The things, KPIs are we're crushing it. But you as a leader know the intricacies of, well, we're not hitting where we really need to hit.
Yeah. And I know some people are listening to this, so it might be lost in translation, but I'll try my best to explain it. I'm going to put the image in the show notes and the link so you can look at this. But I think of like that arc that you're talking about, the life cycle, and we're trying to hit the peak. And even on that, I think of key words that I would look at, which is vision, relationship, ministry, and then systems. And often we start with capital V and then lowercase on the other. So it's all vision. Hey, let's start this ministry. And we go, let's plant a church. Let's plant a location. Let's start a new ministry. And it's vision. The first thing that we do next is then high relationship. We grab the 2 closest people to us. We say, hey, do you want to do this with me? As we build out the vision, the relationship, we start ministry and it starts getting going, and then we systemize it. And that's usually the peak right there. But then it starts to drop off where vision and relationship, and we often see this in teams where the why you're talking about drops off. even the relationship that's the reason we're here and doing this, it starts to drop, and we end up getting to this point where it's just a system that's just running, and we haven't stopped to go, why are we doing this? And for me, I've always tried to, when we get to the peak that you're saying, it's hard because it actually is feeling the most vibrant at this point, and it's unnatural to pull it apart.
Yeah.
But I'd say rather than pull it apart, it's to replicate, bring it back down, to cast new vision to something else.
Yeah.
I'll give an example of that. It would be like, okay, we're trying to build teams. Rather than just looking at the whole aspect of building kids ministry, I'm going to cast vision of let's say our check-in space. And I cast vision through relationship. You build the team, we get a ministry, we got a system going. Well, we get to that. The person that I have put into that could then very easily cast vision to run the 8 a.m. service, and then it's replicate. So I guess in some ways, innovation comes about not just scrapping or doing something new. It's about how you can create a self-feeding and growing system into that. So
Yeah. It's so easy to get stuck in ruts in ministry. Yeah, you've identified it. Yeah, vision was high, like we're executing, and it's the grind of just the machine that's developed.
Yeah.
But after time, you get into this, you're stuck in a rut. And my mentor once used this, I loved it, this or not the analogy, but just acronym of what is a rut. It's robotic, unchallenged thinking. And so I think of this idea of like, we need to always be thinking through, is this as effective as we originally thought it was going to be?
yeah,
Going back to the why of like, hey, is it getting us to the point of that why and the win that we originally had, or has it kind of strayed away from that, and now we've got this sacred cow that we shouldn't have, so we need to go back and do a blank slate and say, okay, let's go back to what's important here, and let's reimagine what this could be.
I love barbecue. I love slaying those sacred cows, you know?
yeah.
There we go.
Let me ask a question though for both of you. Okay, when you come into this place of innovation, we understand there's a concept of, early adopters, and then others that take a while to go.
Yeah.
How do you go about personally to integrate and bring your team into the ideas, to ideate with you, to even challenge some of these places?
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes I can get in a way in leadership where I can just see that's not working anymore. I slash it, which then offends a team member who is so tethered to it.
Yeah.
But I've got the new thing, and then they're a slow adopter, and then I cause a problem. What are some of the things that you do, because I probably need to learn, to bring team along the journey in innovating into the future?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pulling those stakeholders together. And so looking and saying, okay, who's going to have a vested interest in this? Who might have some opinions and some feedback that is different than what I think and the direction I want to go in, and bring them into the conversation early. Because if they hear the heart of it and the reason why we want to evaluate it, why we want to innovate, a lot of times they actually have some really good insights that will help to cast the direction that we need to go in, and not belittle the good feedback that they have that is valuable, that we need to take into account as we're designing what's that new process or whatever it is that it looks like.
Yeah.
I think the best leaders, they're not necessarily the ones that are bringing the best ideas to the table.
Yeah.
It's the one who make your team feel like,
Yes.
they're bringing the best ideas.
Yeah.
Creating a moment.
Yeah. So it comes down to what question, I think as a leader in those moments, it was innovation conversations. It's learning how to ask the right questions to extract the best ideas out of. And then also making you realize, like, hey, listen, my identity cannot be attached to this idea.
Yes, that's
Your identity can't be attached to that. It's just, but here's the power of even sharing a mediocre idea, is that mediocre idea leads to maybe that game-changing idea.
Challenge.
But as a leader, from a leadership standpoint, knowing that you are setting the table, even if you know exactly where you're going with this, I want it to feel like, hey, we came up with that.
as a leader in ministry, that's the pastoral responsibility that we have too as a leader, to say, hey, we're discipling them in how to do ministry also. And so there are times where it's going to feel hard to let go of something that was a baby to us. Like, this was something that we built and we were so excited about, but walking them through, hey, this isn't, your ministry. It's not your thing that you're doing. This is God's ministry. And so let's take our identity off of it, and let's make sure that everything we are doing is coming through the vision and wisdom of God, and through the Holy Spirit, instead of, just the things that we think are great ideas, but maybe aren't.
Because we really do have our bias, and we have our preference.
Yep.
And,
yeah.
I think Christy, my wife, always says, if we force things, conformity comes about from preference.
Yes.
So your preference as a leader then causes conformity. And so if I'm sitting there, okay, well, I'll conform because you're the leader and I don't really have a voice. I don't really able to do this. It actually kills intimacy. So conformity kills intimacy, but it kills intimacy between us, but it kills intimacy between me and God, because I no longer have to rely on God to get ideas, because I'm just going to do whatever my boss says. And so I think that challenges me as a leader, that I don't want to ever have, to your point, people in my team sitting there thinking, I don't get to share an idea here. I'm just going to conform to Andy's opinion and his preference. And so you're right. The greatest element of stewardship here for us is to allow them to be authentically them, bring their ideas, and find that space of where, God's hand is on it. So, okay, we're all perfect leaders and we do that. Right. I'm joking. So now we have to take it up.
Yeah.
So we as a team are here and we have this great idea. How do you do that and take this to your senior leadership team or get other departments on board to a new innovative idea?
Yeah.
Thoughts around that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have had to learn the language of my senior pastor, like learning the language of my lead pastor and saying, yes, I can go and say, there's something that I feel is really important. And there's something like I've got that passion, but I have to be able to articulate that and show how that impacts our church. And so a lot of it is going back to, okay, here's the problem that we have. I'm noticing this is a problem. Here's an area that we need to get better at. Here's a potential solution that we have and the ask that I have from you. And I know my lead pastor, Pastor Aaron, his first question is going to be, who did you talk to? What other churches have you reached out to? What research have you done? Because, we might have this innovative idea, but I'm sure somebody else has solved this problem before. And so really pulling that all together and saying, we've talked with our team, we've pulled in the right stakeholders, we've done the research, we have the data. Now here's what we want to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm going to jump to you to talk about vision casting with the senior pastor, but I want to loop back around on that point around data, being really research informed, data informed around that. So I don't want to lose that thought, but Shawn, what would you say going up to the leader?
Yeah, our pastors and lead teams, they're busy and we want to honor time. And so I don't want to go into that conversation batting around, hey, what do you think about this? I want to come in with a fully formed thought and idea and then lay it on the table. And then that's up to him how he wants to go. Yeah. But then it's coming in prepared to be able to answer some of those questions. Yeah. But I think that's so brilliant, Delia, is what you're saying, is knowing how your leader thinks, how they process, even knowing culturally. Because sometimes there's going to be highly innovative church cultures where it's like, hey, he wants to come around and he's a verbal processor and wants to build it with you as you go. Yeah. But I've always understanding that they're busy. Want to honor time.
Other departments, yeah. I'll tell a little bit of a story to help build this thought out a bit further. But I do like research and want to be informed. I want to take that problem to the senior pastor. What you're saying, I saw some great research that showed that parents are the primary disciple makers. We all believe this. We know this, and it was probably early. We're still going back quite a number of years, maybe 3 or 4 years. So it was early findings and we probably hadn't got to maybe some of our thinking, but I jumped on that and I thought it'd be great to do a podcast for parents. And I went to him and said, hey, we could do a podcast. We've got home court advantage because the voices and the people within our church, their voice matters. So it might be just a key couple in the church who are known and respected, whether in business or whether in family. And I'm just going to interview them just to really hear about families. And my picture is a great idea, right?
That was great.
Okay, awesome. Let's go.
I'm on board.
Okay, great. So I had the research that showed why. I built out a budget. And so what I will say to everyone here, don't go, ill-informed and don't go with no plan. So I went with the research, I went with the plan, I went with the budget, and I went with this is going to be great. And the exec I was a part of, I had to pitch it to, they all pull everything apart. They were like, let's just do a podcast as in audio and not do video. And I'm like, okay, well, I was ready for that. And I'm like, well, YouTube is still is the biggest platform in which this is important. And they're like, yeah, but we could save this amount of money to do that. And I said, okay. So I'm arguing back and forward. In the end, you have to come to the point that you may not get to 100% of your project and your pitch. Yeah. And I conceded. Yeah. I said, not a problem. I said, okay. And so respect the authority and respect the understanding of what the church is trying to do. So we went with audio. Yeah. Okay. So we did it. We launched the audio. 12 months later, I came back and I pulled the Sunday services stream, and I pulled another bit of media that our senior pastor happened to do. And I went and saw my tech buddies, and I got the analytics, and I got the podcast audio analytics of what mine was. And it was exponentially higher than what these other ones were. And I went back and I said, I don't want to embarrass or pull this out, but you wanted to be informed. Here you go. And it was like, oh, let's do the video. And what it was. And it taught me a lesson that I could have sit there and fought and stomped my feet up and down thinking, I know I'm right on this. Or, okay, well, let's get started somewhere. And so to the whole point, two things. One, innovation, you don't have to execute in its entirety.
Right. Yeah.
And number two, as we honor the authority, have an opportunity to go back in a non-arrogant way. I probably came across rudely, but I did my homework to actually show, hey, this need is actually scratching an itch.
Yeah.
And so what can we do with this? And they went, yeah, no worries. And there was no, let's go with it. And for the second year, we were able to move it forward.
I think what you said is so important because I'm very much the big picture, like, let's do the whole thing and everything. But there's so much that we learn in that like beginning stage of let's just pilot it. Let's do a beta test. We have soon to be 13 locations at Radiant Church. And so we've realized that we are now a cruise ship. And so if we are making a change, it's going to take some time. And so we'll pick one campus and say, okay, this is the one that we know really has this need. I can trust you guys to pilot this really well. Try this. Let's make this adjustment. And I want all the feedback. I want to be part of the process and see if this is something that we want to do elsewhere. Or is it hey, actually, we learned in the process, we need to make massive adjustments before we roll this out.
Yeah. I think, from multi-site to single site, local church, like whatever the ministry context is in, there's opportunity to innovate. But I think you have to start somewhere. And I think that's what's important too, is because I have a tendency to want to have a fully formed, built out, like this beautiful presentation slide deck. And I may go in there with, hey, I don't want to be afraid to ask the big things and to cast the big compelling vision. But I also know that we need to start somewhere. And we know this. I mean, I think I've just finally conceded in believing this, that ministry is flying a plane or building a plane while it's flying.
Oh, 100%.
And so it's never going to be this fully built out machine. It's going to be a concept. Let's get it up in the air and let's go build as we go.
Yeah.
To that point, and I'll show my age at the same time. I remember when we didn't have electronic check-in systems. Do you remember going back to kids ministry that far? Yeah, you do.
Those stickers?
Well, I have some gray hair.
And you had to, sign in with whatever. So I sat there just thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, I want to be able to track kids. And so my first electronic check-in system has a name, Helen. Helen was an Excel spreadsheet expert. She's a whiz. She was about 60, but man, she knew her way around Excel. And so what we would do is we would scan the check-in, the sign-in, sign-out sheets, and Helen would manually enter it. It was a single site, smaller churches. We're going back a lot of years, and we were probably still checking in, let's say, 100 kids. But she's manually marking them off on Excel, and she's running reports which kids have been missing for 2 weeks, for 4 weeks, for 8 weeks. So we could put in the pastoral care processes of what it was. I tell that story to say that now we've got electronic check-in systems that are emailing us the reports at will. What is it that, if you had this space of dreaming into the future of innovation that you would love to get to, that maybe the technology or the whatever doesn't exist for that now, but you could find an Excel spreadsheet in Helen and do it.
Start somewhere.
Start somewhere. Start somewhere. That really is the key.
Yeah. You think about that, a term that we've used is that minimum viable, product. Like, what is the most minimum thing, lowest common denominator to at least get the ball going?
Yeah.
Because we know if the idea is innovative enough and there's traction, it's going to gain, it's going to build. If there's a grace on it, it's going to grow.
Yeah.
And I think there's that kingdom principle of small things, faithfulness, and there's growth that comes through that, or obviously that comes with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's huge. Well, as we finish out today, I think there's some great thoughts there. And as I said, we'll put maybe a couple of images that we tried to describe here and also some other products. I'll put Helen's number down. She's probably 85, yeah, to be fair. But we'll put out some thoughts there, some notes in the links just to think through some innovation. But one thing that I think would be pertinent to put in here right now is the latest Gen Alpha research from One Home. Just so you could actually get a snapshot of how children are thinking around the world of that age group, because I think it's in that space we find the gaps in order to innovate to the correct answer.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a great one that is there. But thanks again for joining us on the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast. We look forward to having you with us next month.